Hello and welcome to the Intel Brief. Today is Tuesday, 17 February. I am your host Daniel, and today we're going to talk about US troops have arrived in Nigeria on a training mission, Australia has ruled out repatriating citizens from ISIS camps, and a Cuban fuel shortage has created a garbage crisis. So firstly, the United States has sent around 100 soldiers to Nigeria with the hopes of helping the West African country defend itself from armed threat groups. Nigeria's military announced the arrival of troops and equipment on Monday. So why are they doing this? Nigeria has been plagued with violence as its army is locked in a protracted fight with dozens of local armed groups, including Islamic extremist group Boko Haram and breakaway ISIS factions known as ISIS WAP or West African Province. There is also groups that specialize in banditry, kidnap for ransom, and illegal mining. In a statement, the military said that the Nigerian government had made the request to the US for help for training, technical support, and intelligence sharing. So what? I think this is likely part of the US's wider plan to be seen as the protectors of Christianity. This is something that Trump kind of honed in on in his early on in his second term, particularly on Nigeria, who he called out for not really doing enough to support the Christian communities who were plagued by Islamic bandits. In my opinion, the training will be helpful in the long term, not so much in the short term, but intel and drone support will be helpful in the short term, especially if the US is willing to conduct drone strikes alongside Nigerian military operations to wipe out, key targets within these groups. And yeah, I think it's a good start, but it's going to be a long road to stability and security for Nigeria. But, hopefully one that the US can support them with. It's also better than, China or Russia coming in to provide similar support as we're seeing in other countries. And next, the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said his government wouldn't repatriate Australian citizens held for years in Syrian camps. Interesting way to call the Islamic State prisons. Roj detention camp in northeast Syria holds families of militants suspected of having links to the so-called Islamic State. In an ABC broadcast on Tuesday, he said, "We have a very firm view and we won't not be providing assistance or repatriation to these people. We have no sympathy, frankly, for the people who travelled overseas in order to participate in what was an attempt to establish an Islamic caliphate to undermine and destroy our way of life. It is unfortunate that the children are impacted by this as well, but we will not be providing them any support." So what? So I found this interesting because I shared a video of two families who were in a van being what was reported to be helped getting out of Syria yesterday. So I think this is where it's all come from, this video in particular, and the Australian government has now made it clear that they are not going to help any families who were detained under suspicion of being members of ISIS get back to Australia. What I do think will be challenging here is what they'll do if these individuals make their way to Australian embassies, as if they are Australian citizens, then from what I understand, Australia is obliged to help them return to Australia. There'll also be some difficulty here charging them with any crimes, as getting evidence of crimes within the Islamic State was extremely difficult to get. And so these people, may be essentially free to walk and when they return to Australia, much to the dissatisfaction of the majority of the Australian public, I have no doubt. And lastly, daily life in Cuba appears to have ground to a halt as the Trump administration exerts pressure on the Caribbean country by accelerating efforts to cut off oil supplies to the island. And one of the most visible impacts of the looming energy crisis is trash piling up in the streets because rubbish trucks aren't able to operate on the communist-run island. Only 44 of Havana's 106 garbage trucks was operational this month. State-run news outlet, I cannot say that word, Cubante? No, that's not even close, reported on Monday, leading to a slowdown in rubbish collection. Hordes of flies hovered over the food and rotting waste in cardboard boxes, plastic bottles, rags piled up. Residents sifted through the rubbish to find any reusable items while motorists dodged piles on the streets. So what? I mean, it's pretty clear that the US is using this to apply pressure, but why they're doing it is the key question. In my opinion, it's likely to force their hand in removing any foreign influence from the island nation. And key to this, in particular, is Chinese signals intelligence assets. They have been based there for several years now. These collect communications intelligence from within the US mainland, just due to their close proximity. Though it still appears unlikely that the Cuban government is willing to cooperate with the US. However, as things get worse and people become less and less, happy with the current government, this may change. But still no signs of it happening yet. So one to watch. Anyway, that's been your Intel Brief. I've been your host, Daniel, and I'll see you again tomorrow. See you.